And welcome to this presentation on the appeasement of Hitler and the Nazi regime, and with that, the start of World War II. So let's get started, okay? Alright, so some background information. Okay, remember we've talked about the Treaty of Versailles and everything that it did to Germany, but it's always good to get a refresher, okay? Kind of understand where they're coming from, alright? So the first Treaty of Versailles regulation, okay, and keep in mind when the Treaty of Versailles is being written by the Allies, specifically France and Great Britain wanted to punish Germany, okay? And so one of the first things that they're going to do is Germany has to accept blame for World War I, all right? And it's interesting to understand that because when you go and look through history, it was actually Austria-Hungary's fault for the start of World War I, okay? But Germany has to accept blame for it. Right now, because they have to accept blame for it, they have to now pay for damages caused from the war. Okay, and they're going to be forced to pay over $30 billion in reparations. Now, one of the ways that they pay for this is because the United States gives Germany loans. Okay, so Germany gets loans from us. Germany will pay its reparations to France and Great Britain. And then France and Great Britain have to pay money to the United States because of the loans that we had given them during the war. So it's this big just triangle of just a money-moving machine. Okay. The next regulation, and this is a big one, Germany's going to lose a ton of territory. And you can see it on the map there. They're going to lose the Alsace-Lorraine, which is over here alongside France. They're going to lose this this area that's going to become known as the Polish corridor. Now that's really important. Because when you look at the map, so this area in orange, that is Germany. Okay. Now this area over here, it's isolated from Germany, but it's still technically a part of Germany. Right? That's very interesting to note. Okay. All right. Our next regulation is that the Rhineland is going to be demilitarized. Now, the Rhineland is this area in Germany right over here. Okay. Now, demilitarized, that means that they are not allowed to have military forces in that region of their own country. That would be like if another country told the United States, you are not allowed to have any military in Texas whatsoever. Well, it's our country. We should be able to do what we want with our own military, right? So it's very interesting to note that. All right, the last big regulation is that Germany's Wehrmacht, or Germany's armed forces, is now going to be limited to just 100,000 men. Okay. Now, on top of that, they're also not allowed to have submarines or airplanes. Now, the whole point of doing that is that if Germany can't have a military, it won't be able to go to war anymore. And because they were the aggressors of World War I, now they're never going to be able to start another world war. Okay, to put that 100,000 number into perspective, when you go and look at, let's say, the New York City Police Department, today the NYPD employs about 50,000 people. Okay, so 100,000, that's not a lot. All right, not a lot. Okay, so that's our background. Now let's talk about appeasement. Okay, in a couple slides from now, we're going to talk about how Hitler's going to do things to kind of poke the bear of the Allies and see how much he can get away with. So, we're going to talk about what appeasement is. Okay, so think about it. Let's say you are at Kroger, and you are walking down the cereal aisle, and all of a sudden a kid starts screaming at the top of their lungs because their parent won't let them have the more sugary cereal. Okay, so as a parent, you can do two things. You can either give in to the child, let them have the sugary cereal, that way the child will shut up, or do you force a child to do what you want as the parent? Okay, so a good definition, or my definition of appeasement, is simply this. You just give someone something they want in hopes of either improving the situation or simply ending the situation altogether. Okay, and that's what the Allies are going to do with dealing with Germany and Hitler in the 30s, before World War II breaks out. Okay, so let's talk about those different acts of aggression that Hitler is going to use. Okay, the first one, 1933. Hitler is now Chancellor, and he declares to the world that Germany wants and needs, excuse my German, Lebensraum, or living space around his country. Now, if you are the Prime Minister of Great Britain, and you pick up your newspaper and you go, oh, Germany has just declared that they need more living space. Well, the only way to get more living space is to go out and take it from other people. Okay? So, our next act of aggression has to do with the military. 1935, Hitler announces that he's going to expand the Wehrmacht to 600,000 members. Okay? That's 6 times the amount that was allowed in the Treaty of Versailles. So he's not testing the waters necessarily anymore. He's just going to kind of do what he wants, right? Okay, next act of aggression has to do with the Rhineland. You can see it on the map there. It's in 1936. Hitler declares that Germany feels threatened. And so he's going to send forces in, or his military, to occupy the Rhineland. All right? If you actually go back and look at pictures, he was greeted with large crowds. They were very excited. Okay, because in a way, Germany was taking back its glory, or taking back its pride. Okay. The next act of aggression, 1938, and Hitler talks about this when he's writing his book Mein Kampf in 1923. Hitler wants to reunite all ethnic German people into one German Reich. Okay. And the way he's going to do that, the first thing he's going to do, it was a Nazi propaganda term called Anschluss, or union with Austria. Okay, so now Germany is going to send its military force and take over Austria. Okay, it's important to note that for most in Austria, this was welcomed. Okay, it's important to note again, this was forbidden by the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, so we have 3 times where Hitler is openly defying that treaty, and the Allies just kind of sit back and go, that's okay. All right, let's appease him, and hoping that another world war doesn't break out. Okay, hindsight's 2020. All right, our last act of aggression, again, has to do with land, has to do with reuniting ethnic Germans. Okay, Hitler claims that his last territorial demand is the Sudetenland. Now, the Sudetenland is an area about right here in Czechoslovakia. It borders Germany and Austria. Okay, and you can see it on this map here. It's in this green area. Okay, that area of Czechoslovakia had about 3 million ethnic Germans living there. Okay, a good number. All right. However, when we're looking at Czechoslovakia's industry, about 60% of their coal comes from that little region. About 70% of their iron and their steel, again, comes from that region. So, if the Allies give in to Hitler's demands and give him the Sudetenland, Czechoslovakia is going to be vulnerable, and they're not going to be able to compete with German domination. Okay, and this is really where the Allies start to get involved. And we have the What are they going to do? I love his socks. What are they going to do? We're going to have a conference to discuss it. Okay. And here we've got Neville Chamberlain on the far left. We've got Hitler there with the swastika. And then next to Hitler, the bald man right here, that is Benito Mussolini, the Il Duce of Italy. Okay. So at this Munich conference, we're going to decide, are we going to give the Sudetenland to Germany? Because Hitler claims that this is his last demand. If I get this, I'm going to be happy. It's going to be roses. Mwah. So what do? Well, Germany's allowed to annex portions of Czechoslovakia, including the Sudetenland. And it's interesting to note, when they're making these decisions, Czechoslovakia wasn't involved at all. They just said, yeah, you can have their land. They get no say, but you get it. Okay, because we don't want war. All right? And that's exactly what Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, says. He comes back and he actually does this. He gets off the plane, he has a piece of paper that the men sign, and he says, I've met with Hitler, and he agrees to peace in our time if we give him the Sudetenland. And so now we have peace. Think about it. These people had gone through World War I. They had seen its destruction, and they didn't want that to happen again. Okay. Here's a good picture of ethnic Germans reacting to German military forces entering the Sudetenland. It's interesting to see the three different faces, right? Over here we have the woman. She's ecstatic. She's like, oh my God, yes. We have this woman who's like, I don't really know where I'm at, but okay, I don't. And then we have this woman who I would interpret as being upset because of the rumors that she's heard of life under the Nazi regime. Now, while this is all going on, not everybody agrees with appeasement. Okay? Good example. Winston Churchill, you might have heard of him. He is not prime minister yet. He will be later on. But while this is all going on, he comes out and he says appeasement is like feeding a crocodile, hoping that he's going to eat you last. Right? This political cartoon by Dr. Seuss and showcases that incredibly. Remember, one more lollipop, and then you all go home. And we see here that the appeaser is being surrounded by forces that will eventually want to eat it once it can be appeased no longer. Okay? And that's what's going to happen. 1939, September 1939, the German army is going to attack Poland. Cities are going to be bombed. Ports are going to be blockaded. And Danzig, which had been taken away from Germany after the Treaty of Versailles, is now accepted back into the Reich. Take note, this is from the New York Times. Okay, so America's kind of sitting on the outsides and they're looking in on what's going on. All right. Now, because Germany attacks Poland, Britain and France are now at war with Germany. They said, that's it. If you did that, we were going to go to war with you, and you did it. Okay. Neville Chamberlain, Prime Minister of Great Britain, he declares that our conscience is clear. We did everything we could to avoid war, and our hands are tied. We have to do this. Okay. And just one final newspaper. War. German troops invade Poland. Nazis bomb Warsaw. Okay. So, because of that, because Neville Chamberlain had come back saying, oh, we've secured peace in our time, yada, yada, yada. And because that failed, he's going to resign, and the new British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, is going to step in, and England and Germany are at war. Okay? So, what are we going to do as the United States? This is U.S. history, so what are we going to do? Well, we're going to be isolationists. Not in the same way that we were in World War I, where we waited so long. But we really just want to avoid another deadly war, and it's going to take over a year for us to get involved. Okay? Just over a year, actually. However, FDR knows that we must help our allies, and so we're going to give them arms, and we're going to give them ammunition. They don't have to pay us yet, but they're going to promise that they'll pay us later. It's called the Lend-Lease Act. All right? We'll talk about that next time.